The Mongol Empire didn't come to conquer, they came to erase. They leveled 40 nations. They completely wiped out the most brilliant civilizations the world had ever seen. And they had never once tasted defeat. But there was one man from a small nation in Southeast Asia who defeated them. Not once by luck, not twice by chance, 3 times. With a weapon the Mongol cavalry could never understand. This is not just a story of history. This is the story of a man who shattered the greatest war machine in human history with psychology, with terrain, and with something far more powerful: the will of the people. To truly understand how monumental the Vietnamese victory was, just look at what the entire world was facing back then. The 13th century. The Mongols didn't wage war like anyone else. They were a genocide algorithm. In 1258, Baghdad, the intellectual heart of humanity, was completely razed. 800,000 people slaughtered in a single week. Books from the greatest library in the world were hurled into the Tigris River in such vast numbers that the ink turned an entire stretch of the river black. The Song dynasty of China, Asia's greatest empire, collapsed. Europe trembled in fear. Russia, Poland, and Hungary were crushed. From the Pacific to the far reaches of Eastern Europe, emperors knelt before the Mongol banner, not because they were cowards, but because they had no other choice. And then, in 1257, the empire's gaze turned south, toward a small, damp land covered in dense, tangled forests. That land was Dai Viet. When the Mongols looked at the map of forces, they laughed. A laugh of pure arrogance. They thought this would be nothing more than a wild hunting expedition. But they had no idea that in that land, someone was already waiting for them. What would you do if your father, on his deathbed, left you with these final words? "If you do not seize the empire for me, I will not close my eyes, even in the underworld." Take a moment and feel the crushing weight of that sentence. The man named Tran Hung Dao grew up carrying the burning hatred of his own father, Chen Liu, whose wife had been stolen by the current king, his own brother. History handed him a perfect script for betrayal. He had military power, he had genius, he had every moral justification to overthrow the throne, or at the very least, stand aside and watch the nation collapse under Mongol hooves to avenge his family. But do you know what he actually did? He took his father's dying oath, buried it in the deepest corner of his heart, and chose to defend the very king and dynasty that had destroyed his family's happiness. Why? Because he understood one brutal truth. If the house of Tran falls, the entire country falls with it. A man who could set aside his ego, set aside his family's blood feud for the lives of millions of his people, that is not merely a hero who conquers. That is a true great man. And the wisdom of this great man was about to deliver the Mongol Empire its first devastating blow. When facing the Mongol cavalry, the most mobile and terrifying shock army the world had ever seen, Hung Dao Daivuong Tran Hung Dao did not choose a suicidal last stand. He opened Sun Tzu's Art of War and pointed to the fourth principle: Zi Dat Dai Lao. Use rest to await the weary. Let freshness meet exhaustion. Let the near
fight the far. That was the moment a defense algorithm hundreds of years ahead of its time was activated.
The year 1257. Mongol hooves thundered across the border of Dai Viet. They hungered for grand, decisive battles. They wanted open grasslands where their cavalry could run wild. But Tran Hung Dao said, "No, you will fight on our terms." He knew Dai Viet could never match the Mongols in sheer numbers. Fighting them head-on would be suicide. So he unleashed a strategy that even today's military academies still study with awe. Striking directly at the enemy's supply chain. History calls it the scorched earth policy, or in Vietnamese, Vuông Không Nhà Trống. Empty gardens, empty homes. When the Mongol army marched triumphantly into Thang Long, the radiant capital of Dai Viet, they froze in disbelief. No gold, no women, no food, only an eerie, terrifying silence, and granaries reduced to blackened ruins. Tran Hung Dao had ordered the entire capital to be evacuated. Imagine convincing tens of thousands of people to abandon their homes, their belongings, and everything they owned to live in misery deep in the forests. That was living proof that the people and the royal army were truly one. The Mongols were trapped. 40-degree heat, malaria spreading like wildfire through the jungles, starvation ravaging their ranks. And from deep within the forests came poisoned arrows, fired by farmers who never revealed themselves. The enemy was not defeated by swords and spears. They were defeated by hunger and psychological collapse. A few months later, the once unbeatable Mongol army mounted their horses and fled back north. For the first time in history, a part of the Mongol Empire had been crushed. But Kublai Khan, the great Khan of the Mongols, was not a man who gave up easily. In 1285, 28 years later, they returned, and this time, it was truly the apocalypse. Togon, son of Kublai Khan, brought with him 500,000 troops. 500,000. To put it into perspective, Vietnam's entire population at the time was only around 3 to 4 million people. That meant for every 6 Vietnamese, there was one fully armed Mongol soldier. The defensive lines crumbled. Thang Long fell for the second time. The king and his court were forced to flee across the open sea. Dai Viet was caught in a deadly pincer movement, attacked from the north and from the sea. It was the darkest hour in the nation's history. On a battered boat, King Tran Hung Dao looked at Tran Hung Dao. Despair filled the young king's eyes. He spoke words no emperor ever wants to utter. "The enemy is this powerful. Perhaps we should surrender to save the people." Tran Hung Dao did not kneel. He looked straight into his king's eyes and delivered the words that would be carved into the blood and bones of the Vietnamese nation. "If your majesty wishes to surrender, then please behead me first." This was not the impulsive outburst of a hot-headed warrior. It was the ice-cold clarity of a master strategist. He saw what no one else could see. 500,000 Mongol troops were a colossal beast, but that beast needed to eat. Their supply lines, stretching thousands of miles, were being systematically torn apart by the Vietnamese people and army. The Mongols were starving.
They were dying from tropical diseases. To ignite the fire of counterattack, Tran Hung Dao wrote the Hic Tung Si, the proclamation to the officers and soldiers. Its words burned like molten lava through the veins of every soldier. Seeing the nation humiliated and feeling no grief, serving as generals of the court yet feeling no rage at the enemy, tens of thousands of soldiers tattooed the two words Sat Tat, killed the Tartars, onto their arms. In May 1285, Dai Viet turned the tide. The Mongol army was shattered, and Togon, the proud prince of the invincible empire, what did he have to do to survive? He had to crawl inside a bronze tube, seal the lid shut, and have his soldiers carry him in a desperate flight across the border to escape the poisoned arrows. The prince of the world's greatest empire, forced to hide in a bronze tube to flee from a small, weak nation. For the second time, Dai Viet stood unbroken.
The pride of the Mongol Empire had been wounded to its core. In 1287, they came for the third time. But this time, Kublai Khan was wiser. He understood one thing. Without food, there could be no victory in Dai Viet. So he sent a massive fleet, carrying tens of thousands of tons of supplies, commanded by Trung Van Ho, sailing in from the sea. Tran Hung Dao knew exactly what to do. Cut off this supply fleet, and the Mongol land army would collapse on its own. He dispatched Chen Kanzu to completely destroy the supply convoy at Vendôme. Starving and panicked, Togon ordered a retreat by sea through the Bakdang River. He had no idea that this river had already been chosen as the graveyard for the Mongol navy. Tens of thousands of Vietnamese militia had waded through the mud for days, planting tens of thousands of iron-tipped wooden stakes deep into the riverbed, at the exact point where the tidal difference was greatest. At high tide, the stakes remained invisible. At low tide, a deadly forest of spears rose from the water. On April 9th, 1288, the Mongol fleet sailed confidently into the river. The Vietnamese sent out small boats as decoys, pretending to flee in defeat. Drunk with victory, the enemy chased after them, straight into the trap. And then, the tide began to recede. Inch by inch, the water level dropped. The iron-tipped stakes tore through the hulls of the massive Mongol warships. 400 Mongol warships were trapped, unable to move forward, unable to retreat. Touch a stake, and the ship shattered. Jump into the river, and you drowned. At that exact moment, from both banks, hidden among the reeds, the Vietnamese army erupted like a raging flood. Flaming arrows filled the sky. The entire Mongol fleet was annihilated. General Olma Nyi was captured alive. With their escape route destroyed, Togon's land army once again collapsed and fled back to their homeland. The third time, and forever after, Mongol hooves would never again set foot on the soil of Dai Viet. The year 1300. Tran Hung Dao lay on his deathbed. Mim, the final moments of a living legend. King Chun Ang Tong came to visit him, deeply worried, and asked, "If the enemy returns one day, what should we do?" The man who had defeated the most powerful empire in human history 3 times did not speak of new weapons, high walls, or deep moats. He did not quote Sun Tzu. He simply smiled and left behind one sentence that would forever define the Vietnamese soul. Relax the strength of the people,
to lay deep roots and build a strong foundation. That is the supreme strategy for defending the nation. My friends, the most powerful weapon the Vietnamese have ever possessed was never iron or steel. Our greatest weapon has always been the will of the people. A nation where the leaders and the people stand as one. No Mongol Empire, no superpower on earth can ever break it. Tran Hung Dao was not only a military genius, he was a saint in the hearts of his people, because he understood the deepest truth. It is the people who are the strongest fortress of all. So what about you? Do you believe Tran Hung Dao's philosophy of relaxing the people's strength still holds true in management, business, and leadership in the 21st century? Please share your thoughts in the comments below. I'll read every single one and discuss them with you. If this video moved or inspired you, don't forget to like and subscribe, so we can meet again in more glorious stories from history. Goodbye, and see you next time.